This is the DeFi Decoded podcast by 9 Point Partners in cooperation with Prophecy DeFi. The ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast should not be taken as investment advice. Always consult with your financial advisor before investing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DeFi Decoded. I'm Alex Tapscott here with Andrew Young. This episode should be published on Friday, April 22nd. We're a couple days later than normal. We had to take a couple days off. Andrew, why was that?
Yes, I was struck with COVID, unfortunately, for the second time. But it wasn't too bad, but definitely would have been hard to do a podcast, sort of coughing throughout the whole thing. So
yeah. Well, we need you sharp as a tack. I couldn't have handled a foggy-brained AY on this recording, and because there's a lot to talk about, and we wanted to get an episode in, even though we could have taken the week off. There's a bunch of stuff that's going on out there. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is NEAR protocol starting its own NEAR stablecoin, and Tron just announced the same. And I think they're following in the footsteps of the success of UST with Terra, right? So why don't we talk about that first to help people understand what's going on?
Yeah, so I think what's happened is everyone is sort of realizing that stablecoins are the number one killer use case of the crypto asset class, at least at the moment. And so what's happening is layer one blockchains they're sort of presented with a choice, which is, do they roll their own crypto collateralized stablecoin, similar to what Terra has done with UST, or do they essentially embrace a third-party stablecoin, which is similar to sort of what Avanche is doing. And so what I mean by that is, so stablecoins, crypto collateralized stablecoin, essentially the way it works is, obviously crypto assets are super volatile. It's hard to use them in everyday transactions. So what a crypto collateralized stablecoin does, it essentially allows people with a volatile crypto to put, say, $1.5 to $3 of volatile crypto in. So something like ETH or Luna or NEAR, which is the token for NEAR protocol, and then essentially mint $1 of a stable coin, which is then backed by this sort of over collateralized position. And the idea is that this collateral allows the stable coin to be pegged to $1, because at any point you can redeem the stable coin for the underlying collateral. And the peg is safe because of the over collateralization. If the price of the collateral asset goes down, then typically there's sort of systems to liquidate the collateral right away to sort of make sure that the stablecoin is always backed. And so it adds a ton of natural demand to have a stablecoin that's collateralized by your own token, because essentially all of the tokens, all of your blockchain tokens that are being locked up into the stablecoin to mint these stablecoins are essentially taken out of supply. So it's a big supply sink.
Yeah.
And so essentially what's happening now is layer ones UST has been a phenomenal success. The price of Luna has gone crazy. I think it's the best performing crypto asset in the world for the last 24 months. And so a lot of people are trying to figure out how to get it in the action. And we have sort of two divergent paths right now. We have the path that NEAR protocol and Tron are going down, which is, let's just roll our own stablecoin using our sort of token as the primary collateral. And then we have sort of the path that Avanche and I believe Cosmos is also going down, which is, let's not create our own stablecoin, let's partner with Terra, and Terra in return will let us mint UST using their collateral, we'll use their collateral to buy our native token. So in effect, achieving the same thing.
So before we keep going, I think for everyone who's listening, it's important to understand that most crypto asset pairs include a stable coin of some kind. For the longest period of time, it was USDT and more recently USDC. These are centralized stable coins, meaning they are hopefully backed, in the case of USDC, certainly backed by basically financial assets, cash equivalents or something like it, in a financial institution, right? So they're sort of like a hybrid between the traditional world and the digital world. They are a digitally native token backed by what you might call real world reserves. These crypto-backed stablecoins are different because the collateral is not financial assets sitting in the financial institutions, but crypto assets held in a smart contract. And UST has become, which is the one that is launched by Terra, has become by far and away the biggest and fastest growing of all of these algorithmic, or I guess crypto native stable coins. And stable coins, if you think about it, if there's lots of decentralized exchange activity and a lot of names that are related to those stable coins, then the demand for those stable coins is going to go up, because you might be invested in one thing and you might want to move it into cash. And that cash is not dollars that you hold in your bank account. It's the thing that is native to that ecosystem, which is the stable coin. So there's this huge demand driver for stable coins, as Andrew's pointed out. And that's only within the crypto asset space. More generally, my view is that stable coins are just a much better way for people to move money around the world and to do a lot of kinds of retail payments than the options that we currently have available. There's no interchange fees, for example, the way there is with credit cards. There's no wire transfer fees or other fees for cross-border payments and so on and so forth. So this is the war over the stablecoin world is only going to heat up, because this is a market that already has grown. I think we've talked about this in the past, from like $10 billion, 2 years ago or whatever it was, to over $150 billion of circulating supply. And most of the growth so far as in the past year has come from really two sources: USDC, which is the leading high growth sort of centralized one, and then UST. So there's a lot to be gained by doing this, right? And as you point out, Andrew, there's also a lot to be gained by using your token as the collateral, because, all things being equal, if the demand for your native token to back one of these stable coins is greater than the increase to the supply from, say, staking yields or whatever, then there's going to be greater demand than supply, like overall. And so that's going to help the number go up, basically. So that's kind of what we're talking about. You did a great job of explaining that, but I just wanted everyone to understand the context. So how is that different from other layer ones? Like, is every layer one basically just jumping on this bandwagon, or are other people taking a different approach?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly the key question. Is almost, it seems like every layer one is now sort of faced with this decision of, do we roll our own stable coin? But then the problem is that, I'm a big believer in specialization. So I don't think, like, NEAR protocol's focus isn't on becoming the biggest stablecoin in the world, the same way that Terra's is. So yeah, I just don't think, like, it's going to be more of a niche product. And the thing about stablecoins is it's very much kind of a winner take all market. What I mean by that.
Do you think so? Like, what evidence is there for that? Because like Terra was the leader, or sorry, USDT was the leader forever, and it's growing way slower than everything else now.
Yeah, no. You have to think of it. The way I think of the stablecoin market is in sort of three buckets. So, so the first bucket is a non-regulated fiat-backed stablecoin, which is what Tether is, and that was kind of the first wave stablecoin that took over and became really big. And then essentially the problem was that everyone realized that it was unbacked, and so that created a ton of demand for wave 2 stablecoins, which is USDC, which is a fully regulated but therefore a little bit more limited stablecoin, but more secure in the sense that everyone can see the audits and they can see that it's fully backed. Yeah. And then the next wave after, which was sort of spearheaded by the launch of MakerDAO in their DAI product, is crypto collateralized stablecoins, which is trying to sort of get the benefit of both, which is it's secure because it's over collateralized, but it's also permissionless because it's not regulated. It's like a fully sort of crypto native stablecoin. And which also makes it sort of, I'm not even saying really necessarily the non-regulated part's the key. It's just the fact that all the assets and collateral are crypto native. There's no link to the sort of real world, the same way that USDC and USDT are, because they rely on like literally cash in a bank account.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we are right now, is this wave 3, which up until about 3 years ago, DAI was 100% of the market. Even 2 years ago, DAI was 100% of the market. DAI has been sort of hitting some headwinds. It's not really been growing as much. It doesn't have the same sort of what people in the industry call Ponzi-nomics that something like Terra has.
Let's call it the flywheel effect
Flywheel.
for our audience. It's like
Yeah.
Ponzi.
So essentially,
Yes, continue.
yeah, Ponzi-nomics is not, it's not actually referring to a Ponzi.
Kind of a loaded term, yeah.
Yeah, no, what I'm trying to say is what they're trying to do is they realize that there are huge network effects with a stablecoin, and therefore, kind of similar to the Uber Airbnb approach, subsidize demand at the start. That allows you to get massive scale, and then from there, there's huge network effects. So you sort of justified the subsidies to get to that point.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So Terra's been way more aggressive. That's allowed them to sort of massively grow. And now what we're starting to see is exactly going back to this thing is layer one's trying to figure out, should I compete with Terra or should I sort of almost meld with them in the sense of like, which makes them stronger, which again, I sort of lean more towards partnering with stablecoins. I think adding a stablecoin at the sort of layer one level is risky, and it should be your primary focus. It shouldn't, in my head, it shouldn't be something you bolt on.
Isn't there a distinction though between some of these layer ones that are, are sort of taking the Terra UST approach? So in the case of Avalanche, this is pretty obvious to me that they're looking at this as this is a stable coin that looks like it's going to be the winner. We can drive demand for our token and probably for our ecosystem once this is all bridged by being backed by this. In the case of Cosmos, I think it's different because I think what people don't understand fully is that Terra is an IBC chain, meaning that Terra is actually just part of Cosmos. It's part of the Cosmos ecosystem. It uses the Tendermint consensus mechanism. So like the Cosmos team doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really think like, how do we drive demand for the token? It's more like, well, if this thing is already using shared security and all of the benefits of IBC, then sure, like it makes sense that they would also be backed by Cosmos, because in a way they are actually integrated far more than Terra is with something like, say, Avalanche. What do you think of that?
Yeah, the connection with Cosmos makes a lot more sense, I think. And I think so you're exactly right. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense that Terra and Cosmos, they're very sort of natural partners. I think one other thing that was really interesting is the Cosmos team was talking about actually having UST be a transaction fee token you can use to pay for gas on their network, which is really, really interesting. That's actually something that Terra has. You can pay for gas on the network using UST or Luna. And that would drive even more utility to UST and sort of bring them together even more.
Yeah.
I think just to kind of contrast that though with Avalanche, Avalanche kind of, instead of creating their own stablecoin, they sort of just partnered with the Luna Foundation Guard. And essentially in return, Luna is buying, I believe, $200 million worth of AVAX tokens. And that's kind of how it's sort of indirectly driving demand, or I should say directly driving demand for AVAX, but in sort of a different way. I don't know, like what are your thoughts on sort of the Terra Cosmos? I mean, you're more of an expert on the Cosmos ecosystem than I am.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but I can say that like if UST can be used for gas in other IBC coins, like that will be a huge driver of growth for Atom and like other things in that ecosystem, because it just will make those much more useful. But it'll be a huge driver for UST as well. Like if like Osmosis, and there's a new DEX called Gravity DEX that is launching on Cosmos that are already some of the largest DeFi applications in the world, but because they're not Ethereum based, they're not quite as well known. So it's just an example of how there is a self-reinforcing trend here where increasing utility for UST will help to improve the prospects of Atom and other Cosmos names, which if they're being purchased by UST as reserves will help to fund UST and then spin around and around and around. So that's a flywheel. It's not a pyramid, and I think that it's something that could be very good for the whole space.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Like one thing, not to sort of be devil's advocate, but a lot of people have talked about Terra being has some sort of unsustainability built into the design, which is, in my opinion, is actually okay. Like that's sort of built into, like I said, subsidize this massive network effect. The idea being that once there's this huge network effect and liquidity moat, the sort of what it took to get there is sort of justified by how it got there. But it is a bit of a confidence game in the sense that if everyone started dumping Luna, it would put pressure on the peg, which would then require the Luna Foundation to sort of step up and purchase and defend the peg with their own capital. And that's why they've been raising tons of capital. So that's a long-winded way of saying that the more that Terra is partnering with these other networks, the more that they're sort of backfilling all of this growth that they've done.
Yeah.
And so it's actually incredibly bullish for Luna that they are able to essentially partner with these huge L1s that are, and in a way we also not only benefit from their growth, but it also sort of removes a potential competitor. So yeah,
I mean, that's interesting. Like, what if Avalanche, at a certain point, so if so much of your native token is being bought, you don't want to kill the goose that's laying the golden egg, right? It's like, I mean, there are plenty of examples throughout business where at first a company was a partner and then became a competitor. So there's lots of precedent for that. But it definitely makes it harder, right? To your point. And so like today, if you're looking at it on the facts, it's pretty bullish for Luna. I think that's absolutely right. Well, Andrew, I'm glad to see you're feeling better. This is a pretty lucid analysis of what's going on for someone who's 2 days off the vid. So I appreciate that. This is a short episode. We weren't planning on recording because of, Andrew wasn't feeling himself. But we ended up having a great discussion. So I really appreciate that. For everyone who's listening, thanks for joining. As always, we always appreciate it. It would be great for everyone who's listening if you could download the podcast and give us a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. That helps the search results. We'd love to get more people listening to the show. And as always, check out our newsletter. digital.ninepoint.com is where you can sign up for that. And obviously, you can also check out the SX network. Andrew, I think we're going to have some news to share on that front next week. So everyone, please stay tuned for that. And that will do it for today. See you next week. Take care.
The information contained herein does not constitute an offer or solicitation by anyone in the United States or in any other jurisdiction in which such an offer or solicitation is not authorized, or to any person to whom it is unlawful to make such an offer or solicitation. Prospective investors who are not residents in Canada should contact their financial advisor to determine whether securities of the funds may be lawfully sold in their jurisdiction.